Hello and welcome to Four Corners. Tonight we begin our special three-part investigation into the story of the century, the election of US President Donald Trump and his ties to Russia. Since his inauguration, President Trump has been caught up in a rolling series of allegations. More than a year ago, Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller was appointed to investigate Russian efforts to interfere in the 2016 election and whether Trump or his campaign officials helped them. Also under investigation are Trump's business links with Russia, testing allegations that his deal-making has exposed him to compromise. Over the next few weeks, you'll meet the characters at the centre of this extraordinary saga. We begin by following the spies and the money trail. US presidential campaign was underway. Before Donald Trump was a serious candidate, two Russian spies were crisscrossing the country, gathering intelligence on the US political system, looking for and finding vulnerabilities.
Two of the defendants allegedly traveled to the United States in 2014 to collect intelligence for their American influence operations.
Initially and traditionally, these kinds of operations are very innocent in their overt behavior and appearance. But that was just kind of foundation building, establish a presence, get online, and again, they for a long time would appear to be innocent, but turns out after a time that they weren't.
The spy
negotiator, deal maker, someone who had been exposed to Russia.
Would Russian intelligence look at Trump's business career as a vulnerability that they could exploit?
Well, absolutely. That's kind of standard tradecraft. Goes back to the Soviet era. The stock and trade of Russian tradecraft is compromise of some compromising material of some sort, whether real or contrived.
I've arrived in Washington to find it in the grip of a sort of madness. A special prosecutor is investigating whether the US president colluded with a foreign power. Whatever else emerges from that extraordinary investigation, Donald Trump's enthusiasm for Vladimir Putin and his refusal to condemn Russia's interference in the election are already on the record. The question that follows is why? Almost everything about Donald Trump is eventually about money. So is the answer to his bizarre attitude towards Putin lying in his business dealings? For decades, Trump and his family had made numerous attempts to launch the Trump brand in Russia.
I spent quite a bit of time in Moscow looking at deals. I've looked at everything from resort to hotel.
Russia wanted it, Moscow wanted it.
He had always bragged about getting things done in Russia.
Do you have a relationship with Vladimir Putin?
I do have a relationship, and I can tell you that he's very interested in what we're doing here today.
He bragged on a number of occasions of being close to Putin when he wasn't, of having access to Putin when he didn't. I suspect during most of that time, people in the Kremlin were filling up small glasses of vodka, clinking it with each other, and laughing at Donald Trump's expense because I think they saw him as something of a clown.
Tim O'Brien has been covering Donald Trump since the late 80s, including in his 2005 book, Trump Nation.
I spent a lot of time with him. We traveled around the country on his jet. I was in all of his homes with him. He and Melania and I went to Palm Beach. When the book came out, he didn't cotton to it. He didn't feel very good about it, and he ultimately sued me for defamation. I think it's the biggest libel lawsuit in U.S. history. He sued me for $5 billion.
Hi, Mom.
Trump lost.
It was injudicious because he was suing me for financial portions of the book, which in the litigation opened him up to discovery around his finances and his banking records and his business history. So we got his tax returns, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Is he truthful?
No, he's a serial liar. Donald Trump is almost a congenital liar. He can't help himself, in part because he's always creating his own reality. He wants the world to believe he is a certain person, and he'll tell any fable or make up any fact to get there.
My name's Donald Trump, and I'm the largest real estate developer in New York. I own buildings all over the place, model agencies, the Miss Universe pageant, jetliners, golf courses, casinos, and private resorts like Mar-a-Lago.
I saw Trump becoming a pop culture phenomena through just sheer promotion and the willing to put his name on anything that didn't move, and a relentless line of promotion about his products. He became the best-known billionaire on the earth.
And I worked it all out.
Donald Trump's longtime associate and sometime advisor, Roger Stone, says Trump's capacity for self-promotion made him irresistible to many.
He lived a flashy New York, my way lifestyle that I think many people who are aspiring saw not as gaudy or garish, but as, yeah. Like if I was wealthy, that's how I'd want to live. The planes, the Spanish-style mansion, the skyscraper with the extraordinary views of Manhattan, the beautiful wife.
But Trump's business career has known extravagant success and failure. In the early 1990s, his business empire came close to collapse.
You handle it, Matt.
He bought an airline, he bought a major hotel, he bought a football team, he expanded his casinos beyond both his ability and the size of the market he was in. He got overly leveraged on various important real estate properties he was involved with, and suddenly the piper came calling.
Remember the 80s, the yuppies, the buyouts, the junk bonds, and especially the Donald.
The man who was the darling of the 80s is seen in the 90s as a man in trouble, and he knows it.
Trump found himself on the financial precipice. He had guaranteed personally almost $900 million in loans. He owed some of the biggest banks in the U.S. about $3.6 billion.
Up here when his family fled the Soviet Union in the 70s. The southern end of Brooklyn is home to so many Russian emigres. It's known as Little Odessa. The neighborhood is also famous for its concentration of mafia families.
Growing up in Brooklyn, there was a lot of people who were involved, who were mob guys or not mob guys. So you sort of knew who they were, and it was the epicenter of, we're talking about Brighton Beach, Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, which is sort of a main place where a lot of them are.
He might have grown up here amongst the mafia and the Russian mob, but after his run-ins with the law, he secretly turned against the gangsters. Investigations in the American media recently revealed that Sater led an extraordinary double life for 2 decades as an asset for US intelligence and the FBI.
I'm trying to tick through in my head your potential enemies. Al-Qaeda, Cosa Nostra, Russian mob, Russian criminals, North Koreans.
In 20 years, I think I've done a variety of many, many different things with the U.S. government, both with DIA, CIA, FBI, Secret Service. We laughed at the concept of...
Like me, you may find this plot twist hard to believe.
He's a Russian gangster.
But he's not the Russian gangster.
No, not even close.
Don't just take our word for it. His role as a government asset was described by President Obama's Attorney General Loretta Lynch like this. Felix Sater provided information crucial to national security and the conviction of over 20 individuals, including those responsible for committing massive financial fraud and members of La Cosa Nostra.
I assisted them in a significant way in the war against crime in the United States, especially organized crime.
Against which crime families?
All.
The full extent of his work for government agencies remains secret, but court documents unsealed this year confirm its scope, stating he relayed specific detailed information to several intelligence agencies, passed on specific information about key leaders in Al-Qaeda and affiliated groups, including information that could help the United States locate those individuals. In his own account, one of his first missions was tracking down missing weapons.
There was a gigantic fear that Al-Qaeda was trying to buy these Stinger missiles, and with them they could take out any commercial or military or U.S. government plane. I started identifying Stinger missiles on the market. And then through that was my relationship with the CIA. And they started asking for information about bin Laden and his whereabouts.
At that time, we're talking about the most sought-after information in the world, that is the whereabouts of bin Laden. How do you make a contribution to that?
Not only did I contribute to finding his location, I delivered his satellite phone numbers, which we used to then listen in on him. And subsequently, President Bill Clinton used the coordinates off those satellite phone numbers to hone in and authorize the bombing of his camps in, I believe it was '98.
Specific allegations against Bayrock and the Trump Soho project were made by a former executive in the company. Sater and Bayrock's founder, a Soviet-born Kazakh named Tevkif Arif, were both sued.
Felix Sater's own partner, a man named Jody Chris, whom I've interviewed, who also sued Sater, has alleged in court filings that, in fact, that's what Bayrock was. It was a pure money laundering operation, that Felix and his other partners in the business were skimming money. It's alleged in court papers that a big chunk of the money came in from Kazakhstan, former Soviet Union, from a chromium plant that was being run by the brother of one of the principals at Bayrock. And that essentially money was getting stripped out of the chromium plant in Kazakhstan and whoosh, flown into these failing projects in the United States.
And whoosh, does Donald Trump know about it?
I think those are some of the questions that Bob Mueller is going to ask Donald Trump about. It's clear that this is now part of Mueller's investigation.
The allegations made by Jody Chris in relation to the use of laundered money in Bayrock, is there any justification, any truth in that?
No, that was an extortion, and it was an 8-year legal extortion using stolen documents, which had nothing to do with money laundering whatsoever. All of the cases were thrown out of court, but as you know, the U.S. legal system is interesting, and you could sue anybody for anything, and it was a straight-up extortion.
Am I right in saying it was settled in the end?
Unfortunately, yes, not by me. I had to settle, but it wasn't my choice.
As Trump Soho was preparing to launch, the New York Times broke the story of Sater's criminal past, the barroom violence, and the mafia-backed stock fraud. Sater had become an embarrassment to Donald Trump.
Why didn't you go to Felix Sater and say, you're connected with the mafia, you're fired?
Well, first of all, we were not the developer there. That was a licensing deal.
But your name's on it, Mr. Trump.
Excuse me, but I don't know. You're telling me things that I don't even know about. I mean...
Sater had to leave Bayrock, but Trump's sensitivity to questions about him never went away, including this encounter with the BBC.
But for a year, you stayed in bed with Felix Sater, and he was connected with the mafia.
Again, John, maybe you're thick, but when you have a signed contract, you can't, in this country, just break it. And by the way, John, I hate to do this, but I do have that big group of people waiting, so I have to
Okay,
leave.
no, hold on. One last question, please, sir.
I have to leave. Thank you.
After 2 years in Moscow, Sater was back at Trump Tower, this time working directly for Donald Trump, with an office and a Trump Organization business card.
I stepped up to say hello to Mr. Trump, and he asked me to come on board and made me a senior advisor.
Despite their renewed partnership, Donald Trump continued to deny knowing Felix Sater. In 2013, investors who'd lost money in Trump's Florida project took Trump to court. Their lawyers wanted to know about his relationship with Felix Sater.
I do.
About how many times have you conversed with Mr. Sater?
Over the years?
Over the years, if you could estimate.
Not many.
Not many.
If he were sitting in the room right now, I really wouldn't know what he looked like.
Okay.
Why does Donald Trump say at certain points in his career that he doesn't know you when he does?
You should ask him.
Sure, but there are certain times when you've gone a little bit further, which is to acknowledge that it has been somewhat painful for you, that it has been painful for you for him to do that.
Yes.
So it does cause you discomfort.
No, it's uncomfortable. I agree with you.
I don't think Donald Trump wants to admit what he actually knows about Felix Sater, which is that Felix Sater had a mob background and a troubled legal history, because it then raises the question of why Donald Trump, as a business person, would get into bed with partners like that. And I think the answer to why he does is that if you've got a big enough bag of cash and you plant it on Donald Trump's desk, he'll do business with you, no questions asked.
Despite the maestro's aggressive spruiking, Trump Soho was a financial disaster. It was foreclosed on in 2014. the Trump name was recently removed from the building's facade. But the facade around the Trump's financing of the deal seems destined for the scrutiny of a grand jury.
It's clear that this is now part of Mueller's investigation. I think the reason behind that is there's a clear issue as to whether or not Donald Trump had financial quid pro quos where in his business past he did favors or had relationships for people that were tied into foreign powers who might benefit from Trump making policy changes, like, for example, lifting economic sanctions once he became president.
The failure of Trump Soho and the exposure of Felix Sater's past criminal activities were not enough for Trump to sever his connections.
Like Forrest Gump, Felix Sater keeps popping up in all these strange ways in different places of Trumplandia, including until very recently.
Mr. Cohen, why do you think they raided your office in the hotel room? Have you talked to Mr. Trump?
Trump's personal lawyer, Michael Cohen, is a pivotal player in Trumpland. Michael Cohen and Felix Sater are childhood friends.
He was a teenager, he was a good guy, and I don't know, it was like every one of my other friends. We were all pretty aggressive and ambitious.
Cohen is not the smoothest political operator you've ever met, and he has a fondness for organized crime metaphors and sounding like a thug, and he likes to threaten people.
In 2015, when Donald Trump was a candidate for president, Trump, Sater and Cohen were working together on a plan to build a Trump Tower in Moscow.
Putin hates us. He hates Obama. Doesn't hate us. I think he'd like me. I'd get along great with him, I think. Want to know the truth?
This is October of 2015. The debates are beginning. It's the run-up to the primary. Everybody has been baffled at this point, or many people in the press have been baffled by why Donald Trump keeps saying nice things about Vladimir Putin. He's a repressive dictator. What is this strange infatuation that Trump has for Putin? Nobody could figure it out, but it is worth knowing, which nobody did at the time, that Trump was trying to do a business deal in Russia, and you needed Putin's approval.
So how enthusiastic was Donald Trump about the project?
You'll have to ask Donald Trump, because I didn't speak to him about it directly.
But you must have got a read from Michael Cohen, otherwise you wouldn't put your reputation on the line to start picking up the phone and making the calls if you didn't think you had his buy-in.
Oh, I knew I had to buy in. I spoke to Michael, he said, let's go. That was it, that's all it takes.
We do know that Trump, as a candidate, signed a letter of intent on the Moscow project, indicating he had knowledge there was something that was going to be done in Moscow. He had knowledge of who the people on his side of the deal were.
Sater and Cohen's emails about the Moscow proposal are freighted with excitement.
Dear Michael, please have Mr. Trump countersigned, signed, and sent back. Let's make this happen and build a Trump Moscow. And
presidential candidate secured the Republican nomination. As his links with Russia became a controversial topic of the campaign, the prospect of a business deal with Putin evaporated.
But zero, I mean, I will tell you right now, zero, I have nothing to do with Russia.
Questions about collusion with Russia have swirled around Trump ever since. His long winter of discontent continued through spring, with a steady drip of allegations and a widening investigation by the special prosecutor into the business affairs of the Trump Organization. Among the dozens of questions Mueller now wants to put to the president, what dealings did he have about the Moscow project during the campaign? Have you spoken to Special Prosecutor Robert Mueller?
No comment.
Do you believe that Trump or his close associates colluded with the Russians?
Absolutely not.
Why are you so sure?
Because I don't believe that Donald Trump would collude with a foreign power to the detriment of ours.
Do you think that Mr. Trump is vulnerable in terms of his business history and Mueller's investigation?
I mean, as Alan Dershowitz has written, the average American commits 3 felonies, maybe 5 felonies a day inadvertently. The awesome power of an unbridled federal prosecutor who doesn't have to just look at Russian collusion, but can look at every molecule of your being, your business, it's chilling. The Russian collusion delusion is the greatest political dirty trick of all. It's a hoax. It's a fairy tale.
Each week, as our series unfolds, you can see more of our investigation and the characters swept up in this extraordinary story. Head to our website or the ABC News YouTube page, where you'll find extended interviews. Next week, secrets, spies and useful idiots. We'll introduce you to key players accused of being compromised by Russia. We'll leave you with a preview.
Russia clearly were interested in penetrating the Trump campaign.
I really heard a different person. It was not George anymore. It was scared to death.
I think Vladimir Putin realizes he could inject this virus into our political system and set us fighting against each other.
It's similar to the Salem witch trials many centuries ago. In every way, it's a witch hunt.